then I'm like,
Volume 2, Episode 1.
I've been fucking up since the first and last ever for a while. But, you know, I liked that idea. It was a good idea. So welcome to the first episode. No, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'd get confused. I would do it, but somewhere along the line I'm going to get really fucked up. Every episode should just be episode 69.1, 69.2, 69.3. There you go. That's another way to do it. Like a Square's naming this show. It would be great.
Exactly. Well, we get some dashes in there. And some weird Disney and Dukakums.
Yeah, some Latin. It's not really Latin. Yeah. Japanese Latin's what they call it. Ryan Clements will love it. He will fucking... Ryan Clements loves me, you know that. I know that. Told me that many times.
And I won't do them right.
Maybe once he said that he liked it one time. So good for him. I appreciate you, Ryan Clements. Thanks, Ryan Clements, for me, too. I appreciate all of you for giving so much love to episode 69. A very special time for all of us. We're moving on now. We're growing up. We're mature. Things are great. Cool to see Colin Moriarty. We're here into video games, like gents do. We do this every week here on the Kind of Games cast. You can get it early. Patreon Kind of Games. If you throw some dollars, you can get some goodies. That's what the kids say. If you don't want to give us money, then goodies. You can get them free over at youtube.com/.
I'm going to set it back up to where it's facing my TV.
I was talking about the boys wanting her goodies.
Fergie? Yeah. I wonder how Fergie's doing now.
I think pretty well, I imagine.
Really?
Yeah. She's got to have a lot of money.
That was such a weird story. I mean, the Black Eyed Peas.
What was a weird story?
The Black Eyed Peas were kind of just like a super underground, whatever, hip-hop group. And all of a sudden they got Fergie. Yeah, it was weird. They became like
a big deal.
The most commercial group of all time.
Yeah, it was weird because 311 shouts them out in 1999 and come original. And I didn't even know who they were at that time.
Where is it? Give me some of them.
Black Eyed Peas, they come in full range, I think they say. No effects, they come in full range. They
show out
a bunch of bands. They say come original probably 7,000 times in that song.
Okay.
But I didn't know who they were, and I remember looking them up, and they were a radically different band before the Fergie era.
Fergalicious.
The Fergie era. I called it the Fergie era.
Duchess of Ferg.
She did have a song called Duchess.
Yeah. Because that was the whole thing. There was like before this Fergie, there was another Fergie who was in the English Times.
Really?
That was very important.
Didn't know she had a song called
Is that right? Help me out. History.
She went real through with this whole
I'm not making it up. There's the Duchess of York.
Yeah, Fergie.
That's not Fergie. Fergie isn't the Duchess of York.
Oh, no. But that Duchess of York was named Fergie, right? This redhead?
Oh, yeah, that sounds about right.
I can't remember the 80s. For some reason, every fucking about the UK, like, that was, Charles and Lady Diana, Fergie, whatever. And then everybody was like, wait a second, that's dumb.
I don't remember any of this shit.
Princess Diana, not Lady Diana.
Doesn't matter, dude. Did we care about that? No, we're more trying to name Fergie, goddammit. And I know, I'm not saying the Fergie we know and love, who Peter Pan's and the Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah, no, 2008, 2008. Not that whole.
Yeah. Actually, Peter Pan, that sounds familiar to me.
I mean, there was a picture going around. Yeah, on stage.
Good for her, yeah.
I mean, yeah, good for her.
Do you, Fergie? It's always when they deny it. You know what I mean? It's like when I almost pooped myself and then I just pooped in the bush. And I was just like, it wasn't a thing. If I would have denied while I was shitting in the bush in front of Colin Moriarty and some young Asian boy, if I would have denied that I was shitting in the bush, that would have been a story.
You think that boy still tells that story? He must tell that
He's a
story.
man now. That's how time works. But, yeah, of course he does. The time he got horribly scarred by two morons out there, shitting in the bush, talking to each other.
So we kind of at this recording 7 days away, which is absolutely to me awesome. Shums come on, go lose merch. We're gonna do cool shit. It's gonna be a good old time. Now, off to your heart, Greg. Type game. What is there? Get this recorded.
Yeah.
Disney Infinity canceled. No more. They're done. We're gonna find the stuff. We're getting some stuff that we announced. But once that's over in June,
whenever, soon, yeah.
Soon, it's done. Disney Infinity closing up shop. What are your thoughts on this?
Wow, what a surprise. You know, Colin yesterday when we were out in the living room working to me on the couch, they just closed Disney Infinity. And it was, what? Like, I was talking about it a bit on Colin and Greg Live. Like, it's crazy because it seems so out of the blue. And granted, like, you know, for our audience, for Kind of Fun, right, the arm to this Waste of Life genre dimensions, and that's what got me in, you know, working on for games, talking to them and Breaker and all these people, and you know, their Disney Infinity spin-off site and stuff like that, and hearing that. So to do a PAX East panel about Toys to Life and have it be where we, you know, there was an expert for every one of them, and God forbid I was the expert on LEGO Dimensions, but we went down to talk about what, you know, you expect to see out of your game, and the next thing in Disney Infinity was, oh, well, this be that vehicle, this be, you know, and it was all ideas. It wasn't at all like, well, I've heard rumblings, or we know it didn't sell well, so there's concern here. It was just totally like, of course this is going to continue to go, of course this is going to continue to be a thing, and all of them have to be gone, just in a blink of an eye, let alone, and I'm talking about it strictly from the fan perspective, let alone Avalanche Studios' perspective, where they're working on this game, and then Disney games and we're pulling out. It's domino effect now of what that means, and to watch that spiral out yesterday was pretty fascinating, because But the numbers of it, like, okay, clearly it
Okay,
wasn't
I'm
making
telling
money.
everybody.
They were probably losing money on it to the extent.
You figure this is still a popular thing, though. I was like, Brandon Jones, right? Like, this is not one of the jokes where I make a big deal about it. When I won the ambassador for Toys for Games this year, it was me and Brandon competing, me with Lego and him with Infinity, because Brandon, I'm sure he still does, was doing Disney Infinity live stream where you get in and play in some toy. It's popular, and that audience was too, and the reaction on Twitter over, the last 24 hours watching it be has been pretty astounding, I feel, where it has been some people coming up and being like,
they were the coolest figures. A lot of, Altana posted that. These were the coolest Star Wars figures that there ever were. People like Tom Taylor, who's a comic book writer, being like, my kids loved this game. And like, then you have these people who are like, just into it as a game. Like, no, they don't have kids, they just enjoy playing themselves and using the pro way. I'm like Amiibos or whatever, right? We're just on your desk, like, talking about how much they miss it and how much potential was there. And I think that's like, for me, it was interesting to watch it last night happen and be like, because at first, my knee-jerk reaction coming from the LEGO Dimensions camp was like, oh man, that sucks. And the shock of it was like, that sucks. But it would be cool to get Star Wars and Marvel and all of them into LEGO Dimensions, right? Because they already have that relationship. And then it's like, oh shit, but what about John Vignacchi? What about the people? And like, trying to wrestle with all those different emotions. It was interesting. Other people who are involved with the other games do it. One of the TC Games guys was on last night. He said something to the fact of like, oh man, it sucks that this happened. And he made a comment that made it sound like he was saying they beat them. And like, you're like, oh, that it was LEGO Dimensions like put him out of business. That's paraphrasing, right? And everybody's like, whoa, over the line. He deleted the tweet. You're right. That's not what my intent was or whatever. But like, in that one thing, what does that mean when we're always talking about Landers, Infinity, and Lego, right? And Lego being the most recent to market, and then Infinity, where it seemed like they were on such an upswing, where it was, all right, Disney Infinity 1.0 comes out, and it's like, cool. For me, I'm like, baby's game, whatever. I'm not connected to the Disney people. It's not cool. Disney Infinity 2.0, they're like, guess what? Marvel. We have all guys. Like, these figures are awesome. Again, I played it for a little bit. It was too simple for me, and I was like, okay, not for me. But then Wave 3 was Star Wars, and it was, the movie about emotions or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? The Pixar movie where they were all in their head.
Inside Out.
Thank you, yeah. And they had all these things, and the Star Wars one was, if you remember, pretty much the Star Wars game or whatever that was out. Like, the Battlefront came out, but this is the one where you had Kylo Ren, and you had all the other guys in there, and the BB-88s.
Yes,
play them. And people loved that, you know what I mean? And it was, for me, what was interesting, and what I talked about at that GameStop Expo we did, John come on and show the stuff, or maybe it wasn't John at that time, but you know what I mean. Came on, we saw the Star Wars stuff, it was like, wow, so this is such an evolution from was it Wave 1, what it was at Wave 2, like, well, 3, you are taking the characters, and like, now you're in the X-Wing, now you're doing this, and it's getting closer and closer to what I like about LEGO games, figures removed, just LEGO period, anything, LEGO Star Wars, where it is taking the world, making it cute, and doing something different in it. And so, now to have Disney pull out of it, it's awesome from my side to be like, awesome, now we'll get them into Legos. It's terrible from the developer and fan side to see there's this game people cared about gone. And then, as, again, somebody who cares about one of the other franchises, one of the other SKUs, whatever you want to call it, LEGO Dimensions, it does make me go, are they making money? Yeah. It seems like LEGO Dimensions did really well, but then again, I would have told you that Disney Infinity was probably doing fine. I didn't know the financials or how it was. And so what does that mean for how LEGO does? What does that mean for how Skylanders does? Like, where are we seeing the ceiling, or was it just Disney being like, this isn't an investment for us?
Yeah, we seem to note that Disney is just not making games, period, anymore. Right. So it's not just Infinity. They're just straight out like, I think that obviously says a lot, that it's not necessarily that they weren't making money. They weren't making as much.
Sure.
I think it's the key thing. And I think that it's obvious when you look at the franchises that they have, like Marvel, Star Wars, and Disney, and Pixar, like, those alone, it's like, come on, you don't really get much bigger than that. And it's like, when Disney owns ESPN and ABC and like all these other, so many verticals, they just are on top of them and just owning every single element to it. It's like, if they're not making an obscene amount of money from it, right, if they're not Activisioning it up, like, why not? Why do it?
This is an interesting thing, because it honestly, for me, is super exciting, and I can only really, I guess, speak, in terms of, okay, so let's look at Disney in general. They own Star Wars, they own Marvel, right? And for me, the really exciting thing was when we went and saw Age of Ultron. And we didn't realize, we were like, they were like, do you want to go see Age of Ultron early? We're like, yeah, sure. And we got there, and there's all these press people with notebooks, like, what's going on? Like, they're announcing how Marvel's going to handle games from here on out. And Marvel's whole thing at the time, I remember, was like, we're partnering with Telltale, and this is an example of what we're talking about. We're no longer going to try to do this on our own. We're going to go partner with the top-tier developers. We're not going to do it where we get a studio and try to make it our own and da-da-da, because it's so much work and it is so hard. And I'm not saying that Avalanche wasn't up to the task of making Infinity awesome, but clearly people right in the way that I mentioned something that I hear all the time, like, oh, I love it, and so does my kid, and like, it's a Lego game, and we play it, but there's these references, and da-da-da, whereas I really feel like Infinity is very much a kid's game, with then awesome toys connected to it. And so, for them to go like, alright, cool, we're not going to worry about how we're going to up it, and actually put our money where our mouth is, right? And this then, when I'm talking about excitement, right, you can see with Star Wars, where they're taking this and getting the, we're getting Battlefront, we're already talking about Battlefront, we're talking about Game, we're talking about all these different games that are Star Wars licenses being given out and letting creators and developers do what they do best, right? Then it gets super exciting when, again, you allow yourself to dream and talk about that rumor that I will not let die of Sucker Punch working on Spider-Man, right? And that, of course, seems like such a crazy idea. The more we talked about on that PS I Love You, the more I was like, this kind of makes sense. Like, give it to Sucker Punch, who are awesome at doing open world games. Let them do like this. I still think speaks to that of Marvel being like, of Disney being like, yeah, we can't do this on our own. And then when we do it on our own, it's really time consuming and hard. And we'd rather go get the best of the best and give it to them and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, licensing goes a long way, and I mean, it's just easy math to look at it and be like, properties sell. That's it. So it's like having when you have Spider-Man, give that to a game developer that knows what they're doing. Right, that's good.
And that's the whole thing again. Like what you're talking about with money and how they can print money, it works in the exact same scenario we're talking about of getting them into Lego Dimensions. You know what I mean? I remember when Disney bought Star Wars, and I was like, well, that's cool, but we'll never see another Lego Star Wars game. And then here we were, and it's like, oh, they've just announced Force Awakens and this, that, and the other. You imagine that's so easy to be like, okay, cool, so now we're gonna put out how they want to handle Dimensions this year, because they are teasing that they have to announce something soon, because their final wave of figs just came out, so they got to get ready. Imagine E3, they'll say something. But cool, like, here is the prequel set, here is the main trilogy set, and here's the Force Awakens set, and you have, all these different minifigs in there that, like, I will buy in a heartbeat, right, for those level packs and have them and to go through and play that and mash them up with Superman and Batman and mash them up with Ghostbusters and do all this. And so it's the same with Marvel, right? Like, I don't know how far along, discussions were, how long this was telegraphed. Maybe they were already talking to Lego. You hope that way they can be on top of this stuff. But if you came out at E3 and you're like, yeah, so sad to see them go, but we've reached this deal, and here is this giant Marvel playset, and here's this giant Disney playset. Man, that'd be awesome. And that, like, is the same thing where I don't think that necessarily Disney's board of directors or whoever is looking at Avalanche and being like, well, they're not nailing it with Infinity, but Lego sure is. I think they've had that relationship with Lego forever. They understand what Lego games are and TT games and stuff like that. So now to have that ability to have them go over that, that's awesome. And that then gets super interesting in terms of what does that mean for Skylanders versus Lego Dimensions.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Like, we're talking about kind of the future of like Toys to Life and all that stuff. Like Skylanders, I mean, we're kind of outside of this whole thing, but is it a thing? Like, do you know any sales numbers of stuff that would back it either being a success or a failure at this point?
Colin will have to correct me. I know he's more of the numbers guy, but it seems like Activision always talks about it as doing extremely well. But I don't.
To this day, though, because the thing is, a couple years back, I know it was huge. It was such a huge. It was like the Minecraft of the year,
right? In
context, there, where it's just like something that all of us on the inside were just like, the fuck is this shit? Spyro looks stupid now. And then it was like, oh, damn, no, kids are actually, like, all over this thing. Now, because we've seen so much, especially with Amiibos and with the Lego and with the Disney and all of it, where you go to Target, you go to any toy store, which I frequent very often, way more often than I should, and the aisles are just dedicated to these Toys to Life games. Like, the video game section is smaller than it's ever been, and half of it is these toys. And you walk through, and then it's, the rare Amiibos are gone.
Yeah.
There's 1 million Princess Peaches.
Yep.
And then Disney Infinity, there's stocked. Lego Dimension, stocked. Skylanders now has a really tiny little kiosk, and it's like, it looks like there's just a shit ton of them left.
Yeah, I think that, so my take on, I have multiple takes on this. The word is that Disney ate shit on Disney Infinity. So that's number one. They didn't make any money on it. They lost $150 million, according to the Wall Street Journal writers. That's basically the budget of 3 AAA games that they lost on Disney Infinity. So the games either weren't selling, or what I think is more likely is that the upfront investment in doing these games is way higher, obviously because they have to manufacture the toys, they have to model the toys, then they have to make the games, they have to keep all these people, they have to manufacture all this shit. they might be selling the games at a loss to make money on the toys or something. Like, I don't really know what their marketing, like what their budgetary plans were. But over that 3-year span, according to a Wall Street Journal, I think Wall Street Journal writer on Twitter was saying that their write-down is like $150 million, that they're out of the business completely now. So it wasn't like they weren't making enough money. They weren't making any money. And it goes back to what I was saying, I think I said it some time ago, a long time ago, which is that this Toys to Life thing is a fad, and it can't, and this thing can't be supported by multiple companies. And I said that when, I guess when LEGO Dimensions actually was coming out, like, someone's got to go. And lo and behold, someone went. Now, it sucks that this folded and affects people's employment and stuff like that. It's very sad. But my assumption is that this can't last forever, and that the only reason that LEGO is probably going to be the winner here is because LEGO is ubiquitous with they have a clever way to make it more than just putting a toy in a portal, which is not exciting after a while. And that goes back to what Greg was saying about Amiibos. Like, Amiibos aren't popular by any stretch of the imagination because of their functionality with games. They're like the only way you can get to Nintendo toys.
Yeah, the cool statue.
So if those things were shitty and were tied to tethering to your Wii U, they would sell like garbage. But that's not what they're all about. So we have some market evidence that this stuff isn't maybe as big as you'd think. And the fact that Disney took such a huge loss on it, well, I think Activision actually makes money.
I was going to say, the stats I have for you on Skylanders is this. As of February 2015, the Skylanders series has crossed the threshold of $3 billion in sales, with 175 million toys sold since 2011, making the series one of the top 20 highest-selling video game franchises of all time.
Right.
As of 2015, over 250 million toys were sold.
Right, so in about a 5 or 6 year period, they're selling 50 million toys or so a year.
I'd be really interested though in what this last year was.
I know. It's hard to
before, back in February 2015, there wasn't any competition besides Amiibo, which doesn't exactly.
Well, Infinity was there.
Anything
I guess you're right. Yeah.
Anything that depends on a peripheral is going to be ephemeral. It's not going to exist and last forever. And I think that's pretty obvious. And there are not many examples of that being not true. So I think this idea is cool, but I think that it's like I was saying when Lego started doing all this stuff. It's like, you gotta get parents invested in stuff. There's way too many of these things. They don't have that great of a functionality. Lego at least can be played with some respect. That's by itself, and you're putting them together, and there's some sort of tactile response to it. I think that maybe the market's becoming a little bit more privy to the fact that this is kind of not really a necessary way to play games, and this is just a way more expensive way to play games. Instead of buying Skylanders for $60, you're buying Skylanders for $6, plus you're have to buy all these toys to activate things that should already be in the game. And I think that slowly people are starting to maybe realize, well, that doesn't really make any sense. Why would we do this? What is the point of this at all? The Lego thing's the only thing that makes sense, I think, is actually quite clever. As far as as Disney getting out of publishing, I think that it's smart, and I do think that, to Greg's point, it's wise to mitigate risk by going to partners that are capable, like EA. And having them build games, and they're going they're going full bore with Respawn and with Visceral and all this. So,
if I can say one thing to what you're saying, because I agree with most of it, if not all, is the fact that I think where Infinity has a problem, right, is that they were trying to have one foot in both places, if that makes sense. Skylanders, I think, is super successful and continues to be successful because it's aimed at kids, and it is a new IP, whereas we're totally outside of it because we never bothered to get into it, but those characters have stories and backstories, and when you're a kid and you're like, what do we do with these dumb things, right? Well, I remember being a kid and I would just sit there and play with my regular toys, and I think that is something that happens still, where kids finish Skylanders, take their toys to their friend's house and smash them together and tell stories or whatever, play in their room. Whereas I think with Infinity, it is this weird Amiibo thing where it's I'll put them on my desk, I'll buy the figures, but I'm not playing the game, or I'm playing the game, but I have a better Captain America figure than that Captain America's toy. That's a statue, that's an in-action figure. And then Dimensions is the one where, at least, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say, in my experience, not many people are putting on display, but then I think of Trevor Starkey, who turned me on to these awesome cases to put them in. But it's still to the point of, if I'm a kid and I'm playing great and I'm done with that figure, yeah, you pop them off the base and then you put them in your Lego playset, and they go in and out, and you can put other people in there, and the game encourages you to customize your portal with your own Legos and do this different stuff. And to your point of Skylanders, you have to buy these certain toys or whatever, and I can only speak to, I guess, Gen 1 or 2 Skylanders, where there were lockdown walls you couldn't get to. Lego Dimensions skirts that issue by allowing you to use in-game currency to buy, hire a hero for X, maybe you can get S. everybody's learning each other and doing these weird little, dynamic, active, still play and toy level. And I think it is. Chobot and some super right? And there is nerds like Chris and stuff.
I mean, the thing with Lego, not with Lego Dimensions, with Disney Infinity is like that we saw the progression and we saw that game get better over the iterations. And once it got to 3, the Star Wars one, I mean, like there was a solid game there.
Yeah.
It's like it got to the point that it really did make you think that 4 might be something that is for everybody in the way that Lego games tend to be.
Right. But you feel like they already not burned goodwill by them, but like so many people had already made up their minds, right? Like for me, it was Disney Infinity 2.0. Oh, cool. Sat down to play it, and I was like, oh, no, not for me. And it's like, I wouldn't go back now, and even with 3 or 4, if you were like, no, it's really coming out, I'd be like, great, but I missed it. It's not for me. Not, I'm not on that carousel right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is, it had to happen at some point. I think that it definitely came out of nowhere. I feel like there hasn't been this type of news in the game scene for a while where, yesterday I was in here for some reason on my computer, and it came up, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
What? That's just so abrupt. But, because especially, you think back to last E3, we're coming up on this E3, so a year ago, it was going real strong. Like, at least
Jonathan Yankee was on our show, right, with all the Star Wars figures, and we all talked about how awesome they were and how cool this was.
I just think that the risk is so high in making these kinds of games. Like, what I'm interested in is not what Activision made in revenue, but, what they spent. Now, I'm sure that they made a profit, but, you have to, there's a greater dimension to making these games. Like, you have to assume that the game, Toys from, what is it? What is
Toys to Life?
No, the studio that makes, which one? Skylanders is, Bob's Playset, Toys from Bob or something like that. It's some, I don't know, you'll look it up, I guess. What is their investment to make the game?
Toys for Bob.
And then, what is their investment to make the game and then sustain the game and then sustain this team and patch it, do all these kinds of things, add DLC and update it? Then, what is the manufacturing cost? Well, what is the cost of, getting these figures sculpted and tested and all these kinds of things? Then you manufacture them, then you have to ship them and sell them, you have to market all this. It's really expensive. Cost way greater, and so great, actually goes the downside way worse, is for lose or writing down and have to write go down $150 million. You spend a lot of money, and what a game costs to make. I mean, forgetting about Gears of War 4's budget was about $100 million, so Disney Infinity lost more money than, the budget of that game. Yeah. Of what that game would have been, and so it's not as easy. Business is never as simple as addition and subtraction. It's just not. I mean, there's a lot in those numbers. They probably had a lot of investments. They might be able to get some tax breaks. It might not be, and they're a huge company, so it's not going to really hurt them. Yeah. But it's just way too complicated, and Toys to Life games are not immune to the market pressures of anything else. And there's only room for so many shooters. There's only room for so many MMOs. There's only room for so many MOBAs, and there's only room for so many Toys to Life games. And the more people that jump on this bandwagon, the more death and fucking destruction is going to be seen, because these require so much more money and so much more investment, and you better believe that Disney Infinity closing down hurt the entire article, because some people probably invested $500 or something in that for their kids. They're gonna be like, fuck this.
Exactly.
And that's the end of that. And they just chose the wrong horse, and that sucks, and that's sad. So there's a lot to read into in this, not only in the way it affects Disney, not only the way it affects Disney Infinity and the studio that unfortunately was shut down, but also I think it affects everyone else, because you're not gonna invest in shit twice. It's like when a parent's like, oh, my kid wants to play hockey, and so they buy him hockey equipment. Then he doesn't want to play hockey anymore. It's like, well, I don't know.
Follow you on the next baseball.
Yeah, it's like, well, you didn't follow through on this. Why am I going to do this again? And it's not the kid's fault this time around. It's just to say, he's just on cost for a game that's dead. Yeah. And it's not as easy as just going and buying a $60 game that works in perpetuity. Now there's nothing new coming out for this except for the 2 playsets that are still.
The thing that would be interesting about the chilling effect, how people react, how the market reacts, is the fact that I see this changing how other companies and brands want to address this. Because I have a source who was talking to me the other day, and it works at a thing with the stuff, and they were basically asking me, do you think Toys to Life is here to stay? Should we make a Toys to Life game? In just my opinion, not I'm green rubber stamping this. I think he was just asking if I had an opinion about it. And I was like, I think you're around for a while more. I would not make your own. I would get in with somebody. And I think that's the thing. If Disney Infinity now folded, those properties go over to Lego, then I think it becomes a no-brainer of okay, at no point should we be making this. If we want to do this, let's go over there and talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is I'm thinking about it, what companies in the world could do that and make that work? I think Disney is one of the things. All right, cool. Lego, definitely.
Right.
Activision, yeah, right. I would have never believed that.
But they got there first.
They got there first. Yeah. They made it work with character. I mean, besides Spyro, which at that point no one gave any shits about.
Yeah.
Just unknown new characters. So that's interesting, because I don't think I could even name a single other conglomerate.
When we're off the air, you can guess. I'll let you run through. I'll give you 5 guesses.
I mean, I honestly don't even think I could.
After a while playing rape mode,
So cool.
it just gets
Everyone
to the
go
point where
tweet
you
at
want to
Trailer Jones
try something
and
different,
tell them you're sorry.
Is that still his Twitter handle? He hasn't changed it yet?
It's Trailer Jones.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure.
Yeah.
And John Vignacchi's, tell John
Yes.
Vignacchi loved him. John Vignacchi, one of the best people in the business, one of the most charismatic fun who loved his job. I can't wait to see where he ends up next, but
He's gonna bring that passion wherever the fuck he goes.
maybe he becomes kind of funny.
What if I
Cool.
tried it?
Next topic of the day. Colin, I
Survival.
want to talk about Resident Evil. You got some shit for me.
Yeah, well, so there was passing mention in Capcom's financials that they were planning something with Resident Evil. At least that's what people have been reading into it. So what they basically said in kind of short and it wasn't very long. What they said to begin with was they have a full-fledged offensive for Resident Evil planned for the second half of the year. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people are reading into that is that they're going to announce and/or release the game, Resident Evil 7 or a new Resident Evil game. Greg and I both think it's not going to be Resident Evil 7. It'll be like a reboot. But we'll see what ends up happening. And that brought, this makes sense because Capcom has been messing around with Resident Evil for a while now. Like Resident Evil 6 was very lukewarmly both critically and commercially with lukewarm reception. Resident Evil 5 less so, but wasn't really a Resident Evil game. People really look back at Resident Evil 4 as the last true Resident Evil game. Survival horror Resident Evil game. And they released Remake HD last year, a little before this time. It was probably like 14 or 15 months ago. And then they released Resident Evil 0 HD. And then they announced that they're going to remake Resident Evil 2, and they released on current gen platforms. They're going to revive on platforms that with Resident Evil 4 on these platforms, if I remember correctly. Yep. Resident Evil 4 was already released on PS3 and Xbox 360. It's not a huge deal, but they're going to have some upgraded controls and all these kinds of things. And so what this brought to mind for me was I have actually a soft spot for survival horror. I just don't think it's done very well anymore. And so I was wondering what we want this new Resident Evil game to be and what aspects of survival horror are most important. Because I think that if anything's clear about 5 and 6, Resident Evil 5 and 6, it's that they're not survival horror games by any stretch of the imagination. There's no ammo scarcity. There's way too many enemies. There's not many, even trite jump scares and stuff like that, but it's not contained and confined and eerie. And those are the hallmarks of the genre to me. So I'm just kind of curious what you guys want this new Resident Evil game to be, and if you're even fans of Biohazard at all, because I don't know that.
No, I definitely. I mean, the original ones, obviously, I was hugely into, and they were something so special back then. And I think that they don't exactly hold up nowadays. Like the remake on GameCube, and then now that they remade or whatever, it's just the controls are wonky. You know what I mean? But that is kind of what made those games feel so tense and scary. I feel like 4 was a natural progression for that. And as things get more modern, it gets harder and harder to have novel to scare you. And I think Space is the clear best example of survival horror could be on next gen. Well, now next gen is next gen. So what does it need to do now to make you feel that way? Feel along the way, it became such a big franchise and such a big... Everybody knew what Resident Evil was, that it had to keep evolving because it couldn't just be, alright, mansion, city, it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and it's kind of like when you look at Mario, it's you go from Mario World, Mario Galaxy, what's next? And it's you need to feel this sense of progression, and it hit a point in the early 2000s probably when the movies started coming out where Resident Evil was action. It just became action. And that's how you make things bigger. It's just action, and it's those movies perform so well. I'm sure that influenced the games because shooters are starting to get big. Call of Duty's huge. All this stuff. It's it became more of a shooter game because people buy shooter games. They don't buy survival horror games anymore. Novel back then, not novel anymore. Right. So I want to admit, I think I want a smaller game that's not a fully fledged AAA game, and I think Capcom wouldn't do that. I think they'd be too scared to do that with Resident Evil. But I think it's a smart call to go back to the roots of it being more convenient in a house. I would love it if it was a reboot, capital R-E, boot, and it was really kind of just taking the first couple games and giving us a best of, but what that might look like in 2016, in the same way that we've seen kind of reimagined, almost like a Shovel Knight take on Resident Evil, but of its own franchise. It's kind of like Tomb Raider, where it took the concepts of the other ones, but it's totally different. Sure, but that's what a modernized thing looks like, and it's a good call. I think that this could do that somewhere in between Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider Go, which are two drastically different games, but somewhere in there, it grasps the essence of what we remember Tomb Raider being. That's what I think Resident Evil needs to do for us to play something that makes us remember the feeling of playing Resident Evil.
Yeah, for me, I want it to be I want it to be limited ammo. I want fluid controls, and I want it to be a narrative, linear experience. I don't want it to be crazy. Like, it's what you're saying. I want it to be AAA. I want people to do it, but I mean, imagine like a Naughty Dog Resident Evil. You know what I mean? On that kind of thing, where we're telling you a specific story and there's stuff happening, you can go around and do it. But I'd rather. I mean, my problems with it always were like I always talk about it. On paper, I should love Resident Evil. I should be its biggest fan. Zombie movies are my thing. I fucking love video games. When this came out, I remember being like, I've been talking about when it came out on PlayStation, I was like, holy shit, yes. And sat down and tried to play it. I was like, oh my god, I cannot even control the character. This is frustrating. I never ever got over it and couldn't do it. And on GameCube, I played, when I had my GameCube, I played the remake. I was like, okay. And 4 I played, but by then 4 was deviating for me. What I want them to do is I want this to be a zombie game. I do not want it to do the zombie shit they do where it evolves into lickers and giant monsters and everything else. I want it to be there's been a zombie outbreak and we're trying to contain it, and that's what. And how does this all spiral out? And there's intrigue and story and characters that make sense, and Wesker's back or whatever, but he's a new Wesker because and he's motivational to understand where we're going. Resident Evil, as know it, didn't control well. The story got fucking creepy all the time. Like, I was talking about it with Tom. For me, for a remake, my problems like just they had the zombie rules, but even with the controls, they're shooting in the head necessarily. Like, what is going? Granted, some of that's camera angle. Some I forget what was. There's like a roll where sometimes you can't pop a headshot and blow up the head on one hit, but it's not every time. It's like I want to be in that zombie universe that way. But if we're rebooting it, controls, good story. Limited ammo, and honestly, I'd want a protagonist that isn't a badass. That way, you know what I mean? I want it to be Isaac Clarke, Dead Space 1, and not Leon Kennedy, Resident Evil 4. And then, as you saw with 5 and 6, right? These people continue to get even more muscular and better, and fucking roundhouse kicks and stabbing and shit. Like, that was what we always talk about with Dead Space, and why it was like so scary, right? Is the fact that I'm just an engineer. Holy fuck, what do I do? I'm augmenting my guns to use this ship to shoot the fucking limbs. Everything that came at me was terrifying, and it didn't matter that it wasn't waves and waves of people. And when we started getting into Resident Evil 4, I love it, but I love Resident Evil 4. There still were like the armies of the villagers at you, and it's like, but I feel. Except for the controls, I was in power. Like, I was Leon Kennedy, not scared, I gotta shove this goddamn dumps and run over there and this, but that's what I want. If it were a real survival horror game, which I think they should, because I think, again, that would blow away to go now, especially because not many people are doing it. We see with games like Outlast and Tears of Fear and, the big one I'm forgetting, Slender, whatever, that people want to be scared. P-Toma, be scared by games again. And so if you came out and made a real zombie game, it, again, kept it simple, but made it work.
Yeah, I think the narrative thing is the main thing that you're hitting on that separates Resident Evil from other ones. Perhaps, but I do think the rest will remember one as being a story's game, whether or not it's a great story. It doesn't chill. I mean, it had some poor writing, but I think that overall, like the story intriguing for the thing that they have.
Yeah.
But the mansion, the Wesker, and I love everything you're saying, the intrigue and stuff, and keeping it zombies and not crazy shit. There's definitely a cool story to be told.
I think the one thing I disagree with Greg is like the linearity. Like one of the hallmarks I think of survival horror is non-linearity.
Right.
I can't think of a survival horror game that is linear. Even going back to Sweet Home and stuff like that, but a game where you really don't know what you're supposed to do. That's part of it's part of the intrigue. Like going around the mansion in Resident Evil or in Remake HD, it's all the same. You don't really know what you're supposed to do. You keep encountering these locked doors, you're progressing, and there's weirdness. I was talking, I think, on Colin Gregg or somewhere with when you're upstairs on the balcony that first time and you see the zombie walking in front of you, but you can't get to him or whatever. And it's weird shit like that because you're walking around and you're not really quite sure what you're supposed to do. And I think that specifically was the hallmark of Dead Space and the Ishimura. I think we're all talking about the same thing. It's a confined space that you are backtracking through over and over again, which I think is awesome. And things change, and you pay attention. There's subtle differences, and that was certainly the case in Dead Space, and that's the case in Resident Evil as well in the original one. Not so much in Resident Evil 4 because it's way more open, but it's one of the that game, because it dared to be what it was, I think it gets away with it or whatever. It's actually wide open when you really look at the environments, the town, and the Puget Lake, and all these kinds of things. This is cool. It has almost like a Jason kind of feel to it in a way. And so to me, I feel like this particular, one game that I feel like is not survival horror, but I look at it as having many of the hallmarks of horror, and I'm not even sure that the creators would call it that, is BioShock. And I think that survival horror games can learn a great deal from that. Rapture is a perfect setting. It's probably a better setting than even the Ishimura or the Mansion. Because it's so big that it's fucking creepy because you're alone.
Yeah, so empty.
And so you're alone except for the big daddies and the little sisters and some of the splicers, but you're pretty much alone. And So I want to see some sort of fusion of those kinds of things, but if in terms of like Biohazard, in terms of Resident Evil, like what I really want from it, being a fan of the series, or an old fan of the series, not so much anymore, is something maybe more akin to a fusion of 4 and Dead Space. You need to give people more than a mansion today, I think. I don't know that you can get away with that anymore, because it's going to be short, and like how do you really fuck around with that? You can give them a castle like Castlevania that's fucking comically big, but if you want to keep it like realistic, then I think that you maybe a village or some sort of abandoned nuclear site or abandoned military base or something cool like that.
Small town that's like walled in by water and bluffs.
Similar to, what the fuck was that weird Japanese game that took place in the town? It was Deadly Premonition.
Okay.
So Deadly Premonition, I played Deadly Premonition when it came to PS3. And I was like, this game is low budget and comically bad. But there's something about this game. Like, there definitely is something about this game because everything is weird. It's just weird. There's people working in the store, there are people in the houses, but there's something weird about this town. Very, like, classic kind of, it's like Children of the Corn kind of in that sense, like, where there's, like, something weird about this geographical area, not just this place. But I'd love to see it take place on, like, a military base or something where, like, you can explore different buildings and kind of go around and figure things out, and things are locked, and you keep cards, or it can be, like, something very modern, like I think about Parasite Eve. Like, the cool thing about Parasite Eve was that it was modern. Like, Resident Evil was modern as could have been a skyscraper, thing about Resident Evil 5, I didn't play 6, I refused 6, to me, because I get where I'm not taking my stand. It made a mistake with thinking that they on to the way it was, when they realized a particular IP is what everyone responds to. And Dead Space is a response to it. Dead Space is definitely a response to Resident Evil. Sure. Outlast is a response to the feel of Resident Evil, the scariness. It's not the same perspective, you don't have weapons and all that kind of stuff, but it's definitely that tenseness. And what they need to do is figure out that they already knew what they were doing, and they didn't need to change anything at all, and that what they should pay attention to is the market response to Resident Evil 6. Make a survival horror game. Again, bullet scarcity. I would love for them to bring ink ribbons back. I fucking loved that.
I hate that shit.
Like, I think, like, making the game, part of what survival horror, was cool about the early Resident Evil games was that they were fucking hard. Like, you could beat through the game if you ratcheted up the difficulty level and you didn't use your ink ribbons and all stuff. Like, I love the idea of you can't save. Sorry. You know, like, if you die,
that's fine. That's not how I want to play.
I love the guy. That was and you can't do that. Like, that wasn't an imitation of saves a lot or RAM or anything. It was just, you. And I'm awesome because it makes you careful. I think one of the things in games is consequence. I was thinking Alienation recently. It was a great how game. There are no consequences for dying at all. And I love the idea of, like, you have 7 ribbons you can save 7 times. You better figure out exactly how you want to do it because that's all. And by the way, you have to find them. You're not going to start with them. So good luck finding them. Good luck finding your herbs and your bullets. You have 6 bullets in your gun. You have a fucking herb and a spray can of first aid. So you have no idea what's laying there. That is the tenseness. That's something actually even Dead Space lost sight of, I think. And that was, even though I think Dead Space is actually better than any Resident Evil game. So I think that there's a lot of promise. There's a lot to be excited about because I think they finally get it. I think that they totally get it. And I think that the way that they're releasing these games, even 6 and 5, is foreshadowing a big announcement. And I do think that Resident Evil will be announced, and I think it will come out in the fall.
Yeah, that sounds. I'm with you on that. I think that's kind of necessary for them at this point, like without it getting too far out from everything. I want to give a shout out to Fatal Frame 2.
Oh, Fatal Frame.
Played that at all, but like Fatal Frame 1 was fine, but Fatal Frame 2, I thought they really did, and like that game made me feel scared of playing it in the same way that the original Resident Evil did. Granted, when I played Resident Evil the first time, I was like 7. So, like, it was extremely scary. Sure. But Fatal Frame 2, man, it nailed, it came out, or at least I played it around the time that, like, The Ring and The Grudge and all the Japanese horror movies were making their way to America, and it had that there's the twins. There's something creepy about twins.
Yeah,
twins. You know?
Yeah, going back to The Shining.
And, yeah, exactly. Like, there's just, that game really kind of nailed the whole thing of making you being scared of physically playing it, and, like, the use of the rumble in the controller I thought was really, really unique and interesting and scary. And I think the gimmick that game put forward with the camera and, like, only seeing the ghost when you pull up the camera, like, there's something about limiting your view and only being able to see things at certain times that, like, really does add to the fear. And that's why Resident Evil has the camera, you know.
And that's why Outlast, I think, really nails it too, like with
the camera. So it's like, I think that it needs that some something that works to keep that feel going. And like the AAA thing is I do feel like shorter game. I want it to be a narrative experience that might be like a B-games. And I want the B-games to feel like a really solid 8-hour evil is better for me than a 20-hour game with like an intense amount of backtracking, whatever. Even if there was a lot of backtracking in this, if it was in a smaller space that you do get more intimately familiar with, like I'm all for that. So
I'm all for that
I hope
as well.
to take some cues from Gremlins too,
I'm all for that.
and make some fruit zombies and electricity zombies, but no liquors. A smart zombie that we call Brain.
Smart zombie.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I played Resident Evil was at Kevin's uncle's house.
Didn't he scare you guys?
Kevin's uncle tried to scare us. He's a fucking asshole. Goddamn.
Because if you were 7, like what? Kevin was 6. Full.
Kevin was 6, yeah, and my brother was 4. And yeah, he was like, "Oh, let me show you this game."
So much
we
about
just
White
played Izzy's Magical Ring Quest on the Super Nintendo. It was an Olympic game. It was a platformer.
Yeah.
We're having fucking time of our life. He's like, "Let me show you some real shit." He pulls that out as soon as Kevin's mom leaves us with him. He's like, "Let me show you some real shit." And it was like 9 p.m. dark outside. I couldn't sleep at all. You know what could have helped me sleep though? Casper mattresses. Thank you so much for sponsoring this topic. The Casper is an obsessively engineered mattress at a shockingly fair price. It combines springy latex and supportive memory foams to create an award-winning sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right amount of bounce.
Yeah.
Time magazine named it one of the best inventions of 2015.
Damn.
That's a damn fact, Greg. In fact, it's now the most awarded mattress of the decade. Good for you, Casper.
Go get him, Casper.
Damn. Free shipping and returns to the U.S. and Canada. Try Casper for 100 nights risk-free in your own home. If you don't love it, they'll pick it right back up and refund you everything. You know why, Colin? Because it was made in America. And that's how we do things here.
Damn straight, we'll make America great again.
Yep, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. You can get $50 towards any mattress by purchasing at Casper.com/KFGames using code KFGames. Again, .com/games. Use the KFGames. $50. Their award-winning, invention-driven mattress.
And buying mattresses and
Yeah, good for that.
Yeah. Before you guys get a new mattress and just bang out on.
No.
You ever bang out on a mattress? I probably know.
Alright, topic of the day. This one's gonna get a bit into some spoiler territory. So if you haven't played Uncharted 4 yet, I recommend you don't watch this topic. You can watch it later at a different time. You can skip forward to the next
Oh,
topic.
so we're taking the muzzles off.
I mean,
full spoils.
I'm just saying this just in case. Who knows?
Oh, so you're saying it might get spoiler.
I have a feeling it will in certain aspects. First off, I want to say that this topic is brought to you by our Patreon producer, Steven Insler. Steven, thank you so much for making the show happen over at patreon.com/kindoffunny.
I hope you get Uncharted 4, so he knows he's getting his Patreon shout out here.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Steven Insler's the fucking homie. Also, it's brought to you by other people on Patreon. So thank you. Thank you very, very much. Again, I need to make a note of this so that Kevin knows how to do things.
Well, I mean, don't get ahead of yourself. You can make the note. Kevin doesn't know how to do things.
I'll make notes and he'll do something. So the topic to quit dilly-dallying, shilly-dallying, as they say.
That's literally
Riku from Final Fantasy X-2. That was a direct quote for anybody, all the millions of that love that.
localization there.
Yeah. Dilly-dally, shilly-shally.
Shilly-shally, ship it.
I think it was like a plot point, actually. Anyways, ranking the Uncharted games. We now have 4 of them that we're talking about here. We're not going to include...
We're including Golden Abyss.
5, sure. We can include Golden Abyss. Then we're also including... we're not
Fight for
including
Fortune.
But I want to give a shout-out to the new mobile game that came out.
It's supposed to be pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's a total ripoff of Hitman Go and Lara Croft Go, which is awesome. Great. Let's take that shit and give it the Uncharted treatment. Fuck yeah.
Put it on the Vita.
Totally.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Download it.
Come
check
on,
it out.
Serious?
Gio, how does this one
fuck
get
off?
past you?
It's great.
Guys, I think you own it. Maybe put it on the Vita. Maybe support your handheld. I
They
don't
know what
know.
they're doing.
God forbid.
I'm all about this. So I want to have a big discussion. We were going to do this last week,
Sure.
but we decided to give some people time to beat it. I'm assuming most of you by now have beat this game. We've had some time with it and stuff.
Yeah.
Hit me, Greg.
I feel, like I said in the review, I feel this is unfair to an extent. I feel like Uncharted 1, 2, 3, Golden Abyss, Fight for Fortune, shitty ass mobile game. I know that's a joke, but you know, I feel like the Uncharted before Uncharted 4 were very much. Let's compare and contrast them. Let's do these different things. Let's talk about how the story and the gameplay compare and and the fact that each one of them felt like a definitive story that like because it was always the thing with Uncharted 2 and 3, right, where it's like sure you jump into those and play them and get a lot out of them, not as much if you knew everything, but for the most part they're pretty self-contained other than the fact that Elena and Drake are breaking up and why they're breaking up. But Uncharted 4, as I was saying before, felt like the cap on the dildo. On the silo. All these pieces, the first 3 or 4, if you want to say, that built, and then you put an end cap on it. To where, to sit here now and say, well, which one of these is better? Especially when, like, you're the one who keeps saying, when we talk about Last of Us, right? Like, which masterpiece is the best masterpiece? Because they're all amazing games. It seems unfair, and especially, it works everything up, and, like, so... What Uncharted is the best Uncharted? It's probably Uncharted 4. I feel the gameplay is the best there. I feel the story is the most coherent, and I was into it the whole time. The ending, before we even get to the epilogue, is awesome, and then the epilogue itself. I mean, like, this is the game I always talk about. That when I talked about Uncharted 1 or 2 and 3, really, and maybe even 1 if you want to count the fact that I was always mad they didn't get more, is the fact that, like, this answers the questions and pulls on the story threads and completes thoughts. You know what I mean? So here's spoilers for Uncharted 4. But, like, when you're reunited with Elena and you're going out into the jungle with her and stuff, she does that thing of, like, where she cuts you off. She's like, we'll have time to talk about this later. Right now we have a job to do. And it's like, and I was like, fuck, yeah. And then, right after the next battle, Drake's like, you know what, fuck that, let's talk about this. And he kept going back and having those conversations, whereas in Uncharted 2 and, Uncharted 3, you're like, she married to somebody else? She married to him? Like, what happened with them? And then at the very end, you get a thing of, like, and then he puts his ring back on, it's like, well, what was the problem? And, like, why? I wanted more. Why did you wait fucking 12 hours to have this conversation? Why work, like, or you fight with your girlfriend before. I've been in the fight with my ex-girlfriends before. When you're doing it, like, you want to talk about it. It's not you put it off this long to, like, get to
Let me go find some treasure and jump on some mountains.
Yeah, some people are like that, though.
Sure, Drake and Elena were not.
But, like, but remaining not wanting to... But I agree with you. It is a little...
And so, like, this is a payoff to 3 years and a decade of fandom. You know what I mean? So, like, can we really sit here and compare them to it? Not to mention that, as with, in my head with Naughty Dog games, right, they get better every time because they take from what they've learned and they do it and go on and forth. So, I don't know. I mean, if you're putting a gun to my head, literally. I would say, yeah, it's still so fresh, which I hate doing because you remember, it took me years to say Peace Walker was my favorite game of all time because I couldn't just let it usurp Metal Gear without anything. But, yeah, probably Uncharted 4 is the best in the series.
I agree completely. I disagree in the sense that I think that this game is 100 times better if you play the other 3. I disagree with you specifically, Colin, that, like, you need to play the other 3 to really have this be a great game because all of them kind of have the same thing. I think that 3, maybe even more so than this one, I feel like you have to play the other ones to have it hit you in the same way. Because this one just introduces Sam, and it's just like from the beginning, whether
we're getting new information. If I've been a fan forever,
information, you're in there, and I feel like it organically gets into via him as a conduit, introduces him to Elena and him to Sully in a way that the player could introduce them to these characters and what they mean. It's pretty clear. It's like, okay, here's the wife and here's the like father friend, you know. So I feel like 4 does a much better job of like explaining all that stuff.
Because you're right. Because it gives you the everyman, the instance. What we've talked about in the reviews, right? Where like I love the moment of being in terms of if I'm Drake or Sam. I'm Drake. I've been on all Drake's adventures. I know everything Drake does. So like when Sam asks, is it always like this? And he's like, no. Maybe, yeah, it's always like this when he's getting shot at. It's like, that's hilarious because I get that joke, but if I'm jumping in for the first time, I'm Sam when I play that game, and you are getting all that information.
Yeah, so I think that it does a really good job, and again, I've commended the game so many times on its pacing and its story, and I feel like it is much tighter, and there's a lot less filler, and it feels better. It feels like continuously progressing in everything that I'm doing. Not that I didn't in the other games, it's just this one is so much better. It is kind of a pinnacle, and I think that it does all of the things the other games do better. The only thing being the set pieces, because you think back to the Uncharted 2s and even Uncharted 3s, like it has these crazy moments. The more I think about it, I really enjoyed the set pieces in 4 as well.
Is Nick here?
Okay. I really like it, and it's funny because so many people say, oh, well, nothing could ever compare to Uncharted 2 because that was so fresh and new to us back then. For me, I didn't play 2 and 3 until Nathan Drake Collection
and that's when you discovered I was correct.
And no, it's when I discovered you were actually wrong all those years about Uncharted 3. But again, three is amazing, and I would never say that it's not a near perfect game.
Right.
But I mean, in comparison to 2, to me, it just does not stand up. So to me, it comes down between 2 and 4, and I think that 2 still has my favorite set pieces overall.
Sure.
But man, this game really does just kind of take it up a notch, and it might not have been as fresh, especially because I had just played all of them back to back. But it definitely was the best presentation of all of it together, and I think it goes away when this is about that experience.
That's a great point.
Four just gives it in such a tight package. Personally, in the franchise, if it's asking a question, because if you play, they do so much service that feels like it's a defense service with it. Then
Yeah.
4, 1.
Where are you putting Golden Abyss?
Play it so.
So you're putting it at the top. Alright, so then for my rankings, then I guess I'm saying 4, 3, 2, Golden Abyss 1. Fight for Fortune. The shitty mobile game.
Yeah, I agree with Greg's ranking. Now, this is something that I had a hard time with because I agree with you. It's like, well, what do we like Uncharted for? And it's not really the gameplay. The gameplay's fine. It's competent. It's more than competent, but it's not, like, fantastic.
That's not what we're talking about.
Right,
We're talking
exactly.
about, oh
Well,
my god, and we got to shoot him in the head.
Yeah, that's not really, like, what Uncharted's all about.
Right.
Gameplay is paramount. It's king, but it's totally more than competent to get through the game, and you feel like you're powerful, and you feel like, you're doing what you're doing, but... I had a struggle with this because 3 really is my favorite Uncharted game, or it was before 4 came out, and I really think 3 is a special game. I think 3 is a special game for a lot of reasons, and I agree with Naughty Dog's own internal kind of conundrum with this particular thing, which is that they believe fully from the leadership all the way down to the level down the games that if 3 came out before 2 same exact way, that everyone would be like, 3 is so much better than 2. Because they just got it first. So, that's their memory of, the jump from Drake's Fortune to Among Thieves. If the jump was Drake's Fortune to Drake's Deception, then they would feel the same exact way about Drake's Deception. And I absolutely agree with them, 100%. They absolutely believe that.
And I still think, even for me getting shit about my Uncharted score, right, it's not even people calling me out when I say that Uncharted 3 is better than 2. It's the fact that Uncharted 3 got a 10 from IGN and Uncharted 2 got a 9.5. If Uncharted 2 would have gotten a 10 and Uncharted 3 would have gotten a 10, the fervor would be so much less. But it's that people think that they played Uncharted 2 and this is a 10, this is a perfect, and then when it didn't get that was and then the game they think that didn't have the wow moments because they've been wowed so much the first time.
Right. The jump from, as you saw, because you played the Nathan Drake collection recently,